Hi, friends. Today, we're talking about the Dark Angels. Yep, I've seen the trillions of requests and I'm finally bending the knee. Wait a minute, what's that? Oh my god. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Looks like Whimsy's back on the menu, boys. The new Red Corsair models are legitimately some of the best models I've ever seen from modern GW. And, dare I say it, they might be my favorite models GW's ever released since I've gotten into the hobby. They're just so wonderful. Everything that I bitch and complain about the Primaris look is rectified with these little pirate boyos. They all have unique sets of armor made from different armor marks. They have good detail without being over detailed in every single inch of the model. And most importantly, they don't seem to have those goddamned heresy pinheads. I love these models so much. They're so nice. And since I'm so enamored with these new models, just like some good booty, this video is being stolen by the Red Corsairs. Sorry, Dark Angel fans. Maybe spamming a billion comments every time I post will work next time. The Red Corsairs are a renegade warband that's composed of traitor space marines, traitor guardsmen, cultists, mercenaries, and even Xenos. Unlike most other traitor forces, the Corsairs are notable for betraying the Imperium without any overt dark influence from the Chaos Gods. They would later pledge themselves to the Dark Gods, but originally they rebelled over good intentions and tax evasion. What would become the Red Corsairs only really pledged themselves to chaos when Luft Huron, Tyrant of Badab, made some dark pact to save his own life. But we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. Now, I won't go fully in detail on the Badab War since I already have an entire video on it, which you should watch after this one for some more context. But basically, Luft Huron was the chapter master of the Astral Claws, as well as the self-proclaimed Tyrant of the Badab sector, and he led a group known as the Maelstrom Warders. The Maelstrom Warders were an alliance of Space Marine chapters tasked with defending the Maelstrom Zone from the Chaos and Xeno forces that plagued it. And Huron was so good at his job that one day he decided he could probably just, crush these treacherous forces at the source rather than just defend against them. And he called for extra supplies and stuff to be sent so that he could finish the fight. But he was ignored since he seemed to already be doing pretty good. Which, speaking of supplies, you know what's a supply? Food. And with that, I must say, oh no! The Red Corsairs raided my pantry and fridge, and I'm left with no food. Ah, what am I supposed to do? Well, luckily, this video is sponsored by Factor. Factor is one of my favorite sponsors, and they're a fresh, never frozen meal service. All of their meals are super easy to prepare. You get a delicious meal in just 2 minutes with no prep or anything. So, throw all those preconceptions you have about microwaves into the maelstrom because these meals are great. This time around, my favorite meal was a truffle butter filet mignon. I was really surprised with how tender and flavorful the steak was, but I think the real star may have just been the potato leek mash. I thought the flavor on that was actually immaculate. The carrots were also good, but I mean, it's hard to mess up a carrot. And if you choose Factor, every Factor meal is real food with real ingredients prepared by professional chefs and is dietitian approved. You can choose from a rotating weekly menu of over 100 options to fit whatever diet plan you'd like. So skip the expensive fast food options and get yourself a Factor meal delivered straight to your door. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code CrackDuckFB50 to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code CrackDuckFB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. But anyways, after the High Lords ignored his request, Huron said, well, if you're gonna ghost me, well, I'm gonna ghost these taxes. See how you like that? And, surprise, surprise, the Imperium didn't like that, and they sent investigation fleets to see why Badab's gene seed and resource tides had ceased, and they realized that good old Huron was hoarding them. And then big ol' civil war happens, Space Marines fight Space Marines, it's super cool, and then Huron eventually takes a Melta gun to the face. And if you know anything about Melta, you know that Strength 9 AP4 fucking hurts. Especially since Huron was in Melta range, and that damn Star Phantom must have got a 6 on his damage roll, cause the entire right side of Huron's body was destroyed by the Melta blast. And since he was no longer quite right, he left for the very maelstrom that he once swore to destroy. Marine apothecaries and tech marines worked tirelessly to rebuild their crippled leader, and during his various operations, Luft Huron eventually made a dark pact with the ruinous powers of chaos, pledging his life and the lives of the astral claws to the dark gods. And he was reborn Huron Blackheart. And he also got a funny little dog monkey parrot demon thing. And beyond completing the pirate aesthetic, Hamadry is a mysterious little warp familiar that does psychic powers for Blackheart and is theorized to be the link between Blackheart and the Chaos Gods, perhaps ensuring Huron is acting in compliance with whatever agreements he made. Like a little gremlin supervisor of sorts. But anyways, rebuilt and reborn, Huron Blackheart regrouped the remaining Astral Claws and whatever other forces were still loyal to him into the Red Corsairs. The Red Corsairs began to strike the Maelstrom Zone with a series of piratical raids to both gather much needed supplies and rebuild their ranks. And over time, as Huron gained notoriety and power, he built up a huge pirate fleet of fellow renegade forces. Although Huron pledged himself to the Dark Gods, he and most of the Red Corsairs aren't really as devout as other Chaos Forces are. Since the Astral Claws turned traitor relatively recently in the grand timeline of 40k, many Marines still aren't used to worshipping gods, let alone Chaos Gods. And some are even outright hostile towards the thought of worshipping the divine, since many loyalist Marines were atheists. Also, many people have the misconception that the Red Corsairs as a whole are a true renegade Space Marine Legion in the sense that they aren't Chaos aligned at all, but that's simply not true, as in the current timeline, most of them are devoted to the Chaos Gods. However, there are many Marines within the Legion who don't necessarily worship Chaos, rather, they work for them since their gifts are powerful. And then beyond those Marines, there's also ones who are even more detached from Chaos and only join the Corsairs because they're either delusioned with the Imperium or outcasted, or are just simply in it for the love of the piratical game. Basically, a lot of Red Corsairs work for and are aligned with Chaos, but they don't fully worship the Chaos Gods as true deities, just as a way to get more power, influence, and riches. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the Red Corsairs worship for the same reason that those mega millionaire televangelists do. Anyways, though, the Red Corsairs eventually began to raid areas outside of the Maelstrom Zone, and especially with the Great Rift opening, the Corsairs have been terrorizing wider parts of the galaxy. It's said that Huron's pirate fleets rival the strength of Heresy-era legions and is one of the most formidable Chaos forces in the entire galaxy, only truly being eclipsed by the more cohesive Founding Legions and Abaddon's Black Legion. But he's still one of the most threatening forces in the galaxy, and Abaddon even gifted him a Blackstone Fortress as a bid for loyalty and as a bit of a power move. Then, as for their fighting style, befitting their pirate theme, the Red Corsairs are experts in boarding actions and lightning raids. They often pillage Imperial vessels and trading outposts in search of supplies and valuable relics. Like most other Marine forces, the Marines themselves make up an elite strike force, while the Corsair human, mutant, and Xeno auxiliaries aid operations where more manpower is needed or secondary operations that can be delegated to lesser beings. But in the most current time, they're up to much the same, raiding and expanding Huron's empire. Outside of that, they often help other Chaos forces, most notably is probably when they fought along the Thousand Suns and Tzeentch legions in an attempt to slay Guilliman. And of course, as is the case with virtually all Chaos factions, they also like to fight against other Chaos forces, either for dominance or resources. Most notably for this point is in the Arcs of Omen when the Red Corsairs fought against the Black Legion. But that's about it for the Red Corsairs. They're Chaos Space Pirates. How can you not think they're cool? I really like that their whole MO is mostly just some good old fashioned, I want some more power and riches, yo ho. In a setting of grand ambitions, it's fun when some Marines are just in it for a fun, yo ho pirates lifestyle. I'm also a big fan of them having a lot of non-chaos renegade Marines among their ranks. I've always wanted more renegade chapters to get attention. However, I will say, I do think that Huron's power and influence is incredibly super overhyped by a lot of the fandom. I've seen many people saying that Huron would be a better War Master than Abaddon for what feels like forever now, and honestly, I just don't see it. Abaddon is not only way more powerful than Huron, he's also just a way better embodiment of the Chaos God's goals. I'm not necessarily an expert in Chaos lore, but lore-wise, I really don't see any reason the Chaos Gods would pick Huron over Abaddon. And like, just individual power-wise, Huron isn't even on the same level as the Chaos Champions. He literally got his ass kicked by Typhus. He wouldn't stand a chance against Abaddon. But let's make this a little compliment sandwich and go back to those gorgeous models. I know it sounds corny and I don't want to be too melodramatic, but the Red Corsair reveals have legitimately restored hope in me that Warhammer models can actually look the way that I like. That's not to say that new Warhammer models are necessarily bad or anything. I've just kind of accepted that I don't like the new art direction, and 90% of new releases simply aren't for me since I prefer the old style. But god damn it, these new models are right up my alley based on what limited looks we got. They embody almost everything I wanted from modern Space Marine models. They're properly tall, they have sharp details, and they're plastic kits, but they still retain the hodgepodge feel of old Marines and are stylized to be closer to the heroic proportions I like. And I cannot stress this enough. It looks to me that they have properly sized heads, unlike the Heresy ones. Woo! But I'll have to see them in hand, I suppose. I mean, I did this little rough mock up, but it's always weird doing that. I just really hope that if/when they do a Mark 7 refresh, they follow this art direction. I'm sure these are a pseudo pre-tool and they'll just recycle the STLs for the models, which I would be perfectly fine with. I love how they look. And the cherry on top is that they teased new Crusade rules that let us make custom characters and units, and that just sounds so fun. It seems like they're trying to make the tabletop game more fluffy and customizable again. I've been playing my first Crusade, and it's legitimately my favorite way to play. It's just so fun to make characters and build them up in a narrative. And if you can actually have rules to make custom units, I think that would make it even better. Older editions still seem more fluffy, but this will be a great step if implemented well and thoughtfully. I'm honestly fine with the 40k side game being the fluffy one, while the main game is more of a simplistic pick up and play competitive game, you know? But we're treading dangerously close to another crazy person complaining rant. So, back to the Red Corsairs. I love these crazy pirate boyos, and I'm happy to see them get more attention. Also, I'm pretty sure that the Big Guns Never Tire rule owes its namesake to a Huron quote, which is pretty baller. But let me know what you think of the Red Corsairs and what you think of those gorgeous new models. This is for real the most hype I've been for a new release in a very long time. I can't wait to make them into Space Wolf 13th Company and some Firstborn Dragon Lords. And with that, let me know what you think about the Red Corsairs in the comments below. And don't forget to head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code CrackDuckFB50 to get 50% off on your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Anyways though, thank you for watching and thank you to all my awesome patrons. You're all very epic. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and consider sharing to all your piratical buddies. Thanks. Also, everyone complaining about Huron's head, his face literally got melted off. Oh, boo-hoo, my Chaos Pirate Lord is too ugly for me. His face literally got melted off by a melt-a-gun, known and named for melting!